Welcome back to the Menopause Coach Podcast with me, your host, as always, Adele Johnston, the Menopause Coach and your educator. And today we are going inside a topic that is a vulnerable share. So I am pre-warning you at the very beginning of this episode. I will be sharing with you some insight into the last year of my life, and we are talking about grieving individuals that are actually still alive. So this is not about loss as in the loss or the death of someone. It's the loss or the death of relationships and grieving that version of yourself that you thought you had to become in order to hold on to those relationships. So just a bit of a disclaimer at the start of this one. If that feels like it will trigger you, then please do make the appropriate decisions. As always, this episode and all other episodes are not designed to replace any medical advice, guidance, etc., etc. We have to cover all of this off. It is for information purposes and for your entertainment as we listen in and go through what we want to cover today together. So there are some people that we grieve long before we've officially lost them, long before they're gone from this world. Not because they've died, like I say, but because one day they slowly stopped choosing us. And that can look like messages become fewer, plans stop happening that you've had before, replies disappear, you don't get answers to messages, your phone calls are not taken, and when they are, you're maybe hung up on, and you start wondering if you've done something wrong. This is important, and I don't think we talk enough about it. I'm going to bring you in on a psychology lens on this one, and I'm going to share some stories with you, because when we start to understand this, we understand the concepts. And there's some really core concepts in psychology, in the psychology space, that I'm going to explain. Now, there are times that we will replay things over and over in our head. This is normal human behavior when something happens around us or to us, because we're searching for an answer. We're searching for, when did everything change? Was it me? Was it a certain situation? Was it something that was said? So today I want to talk about a different kind of grief. Not the grieving of people who have passed, the grieving the version of yourself that you became because you were absolutely terrified of losing relationships. Because for some of us, grief sits in the depths of losing relationships, losing connections with people. And I think I've personally been mourning the woman that I believe that I had to become in order to keep people and relationships in my own life. That in itself was a massive realization moment when this happened inside a therapy session that I was having, and also then the aftermath of journaling that out. But maybe for me, maybe for you, you've been grieving like that for far too long without the ability to fully process it. So let me share a story with you, because this is really important to bring it into context. A year ago, roughly, someone that I really deeply cared for, I still do, told me that my success triggered her. And at first, I didn't really know what to do with that. I really didn't. And I noticed then that slowly but surely she started to disappear. She stopped reading my messages, she stopped replying to any messages, and she cancelled some plans that we had together. Now, when I noticed that actually she'd also stopped watching all of my social media, and then I found out that I'd been restricted by her so that she didn't need to see any of my content, that's when everything just went completely silent. There was no conversations around it. There was no explanation around it. There was no closure around it. And we've still not spoken properly for over a year. And for a long time, I found myself asking, what did I do? Constantly coming back to, what did I do? What did I say? Was it something that happened? Because that is what our brains do. And as a psychology, masters of psychology, graduate, and I never say expert in the space because I don't believe that anyone ever truly is, But understanding the psychology of the situation from the academic side of things, and then actually being in the middle of it all, I was like, wow, like this is blowing my brain. When there's no ending in a situation, whether it be like a relationship that you are in right now or something that feels a little bit in turmoil, that's the worst torture in these situations. And our brain looks to close the loop, constantly looking for, was it this? Was it that? Did I do this? Did they do that? And we start to then need to do that in order to grieve and to then heal. And in psychology, there is a concept called ambiguous loss. I've spoken about this before, but I want to read you an extract from one of the research papers around all of this, because I just think that it defines it so beautifully clearly. And that's quite unusual for a research paper, because at times I read these and I'm like, what does that actually mean? But this is really strong when we think about what does ambiguous loss mean. So let me read this for you. I'm going to bring it up on my screen. Just give me 2 seconds, because this is such an important understanding. When I refer to psychology concept, ambiguous loss, it's like, great, but what actually is that? So let me just bring the paper up now. Compared with clear-cut loss by death, ambiguous loss is defined as a loss that is not definite because the person is missing or mentally absent but physically present, for example, through Alzheimer's disease. So in the kind of summary of that, it's the individual is still in your life, they're still alive, they're still here, they've not died, but actually the impact of their, maybe the change to their personality, maybe they're still here, but you don't have a pathway or a communication route into them. That is what ambiguous loss is. And it's so important that we understand this. If anyone does want to read that paper, you can find that online. We'll include it in the show notes for you as well, so you can go ahead and read it if that's something you're interested in. And that paper was published by Hong and Habermas. Now, one of the most painful forms of grief, this, right? Because the person is still alive. I've spoken to many a person who has experienced this in some form, whether that be through a parent with Alzheimer's or a relationship that has just completely broken down and you don't know why. They are physically available, as in they're still alive, but they're psychologically absent. There's no funeral. There's no goodbye. There's no closure. There's no opportunity, or so it seems, to go through any type of repair. So your attachment system as a human keeps searching. Your brain keeps looking to close the loop. It looks for certainty behind it all because the story never actually came to a conclusion. It's kind of like the chapters we're writing and then it's just like ... Like, well, what happened? So instead, your mind starts to create one, right? You start to write that chapter next. Mine did. I created a story that sounded a bit like this, and here is my vulnerable share for you today. With the most love and respect for myself, or I wouldn't be sharing it. I told myself maybe I was too much. I told myself that maybe I'd become too successful. I told myself that maybe this is just what happens. Maybe people just leave when I expand and grow, they will leave. And the scary thing about beliefs like this is that they don't stay attached to one relationship. They become attached to you, your identity. Okay, without even realizing it, I started believing that success wasn't safe. I started to tell myself that visibility would come with a cost. That meant that every single opportunity that came my way, I found myself saying no to. Truly, right? For some of you that have followed me for a long time in the business space, this will shock you. I know it will. Okay, vulnerable share. Every milestone that I was coming up across and achieving in my business and my personal life and my relationships, I started to then say, this is unsafe. I could lose someone. So I started questioning everything. I remember in a therapy session with my therapist, I said to her, should I just not celebrate? Like, celebrate less. Let's just not share things. Keep it all hidden, because telling other people, it triggers them. I've been told it does. Should I stop sharing altogether and just make my social media about just, tips and business and things and not me? Should I become quieter and just not really show the true version of behind the scenes of my life? Should I hire more team to do the front end stuff so that I can just retract back and do all the things that make me feel really, really good and that I love doing and expanding in, but just not let other people see me do that? This has been me for the last year. And you've maybe not even noticed. This has been me for the last year. Not because anyone asked me to, and not because I was told I needed to, but because my nervous system truly believed that shrinking and dimming my light would keep me safe. And if I'm completely bloody honest about all of this, it wasn't the first time that this has happened to me. And this is part of the most vulnerable part of this share. Now, growing up, I had the most amazing childhood. I was happy, really happy, completely a daddy's girl. So losing my dad a couple of years ago was really challenging for me as a woman, as a daughter, because I have heard versions of what has happened in this friendship relationship from my own mum, out of her own mouth. My mum has caused me a great deal of anxiety over the years, pain over the years, and I know for many other of you listening to this, you'll be resonating with it. But I do not blame her for any of it. Her own unresolved trauma and hurt has come from her own childhood experiences. But then her own anger will come out and it's always projected towards me. It still is, as a 43-year-old woman. But as a child and as children, for each of us, we don't have the emotional capacity to separate someone else's pain from our own worth. So we learn very early on. We observe. Children learn through watching and listening. Observational learning. Okay? And then they start doing. Children don't think my parent has unresolved trauma. So, bless her, like that's hard. Like, I get it. Or, in a situation where it's like, I get why you're being like that. Children think, oh, what have I done? Like, that's me. This is one of the cruelest parts of childhood. And we personalize what we were never actually responsible for. It was never ours to hold. Now, there is another psychology paper within all of this as well. And I love this, okay? And I would encourage as many of you to read up on these psychology models or methods and frameworks that I'm telling you about here. But psychologist John Bowlby, okay, pronounced that way, but spelt like Bow, Bowlby. John Bowlby spoke about something that is called internal working models. I love how they always have like models, methods, frameworks, concepts. But internal working models, as we break this down into like a really understandable method and form, is that as children, we don't just learn how to tie our shoes or ride a bike. Okay, we learn how relationships work. We develop what psychology and psychologists call internal working model, a blueprint for love, a blueprint for belonging, a blueprint for life. And mine sounded something like this. And I'm sharing it with you with love, right? If I upset someone, it's my responsibility to fix it. So I became the perfectionist, the fixer from a very young age. If I upset someone, it is my responsibility to fix it. If someone is angry, I've probably done something wrong, more so if they were projecting that anger towards me. I also learned, and I say learned because I'm going to explain this in a second, that love feels safer when I make myself smaller. When I don't allow my big personality to come out, when I don't allow my extrovert version of my introverted self to be seen, heard, loved, experienced. So I would say no to things. I would hold myself back from things. I wouldn't put myself into the limelight or the shining light. I would reserve myself back because love feels safer when I make myself smaller. I didn't sit down one day and choose those beliefs. It's not something that we, knowingly will choose to do. No. So for me, when a friend told me that my success triggered her, those were her words, and then slowly started to detach and disappear, it wasn't just a friendship ending. It collided with a blueprint that I'd been carrying with me since childhood for decades. My nervous system didn't hear that I'm one person and I'm struggling a bit with your growth. My nervous system heard, see, you're too much. You got to go make yourself smaller again. Yeah. That's the internal working models. That's what they do. They don't just influence how we remember past, they influence how we interpret now, the future, the present and the future, really, but the present. And essentially, our earliest relationships, they will be with a caregiver, with an adult, potentially with siblings, become templates for how we understand us and how we understand other humans, other people, relationships in our lives. And if love feels conditional to us, we learn to perform for it. If acceptance feels unpredictable, like if you think, I don't know if I'm going to be accepted, that's the whole belonging part of our human needs. We learn to scan, we learn to monitor not just others, but ourselves. Is my behavior okay? Am I being too much or not enough? Or is this going to be judged? And if connection feels really fragile for us, then we learn to become whoever we think we need to be in order for other people to like us. And I recognize this with teenagers. I've got 2 of them in the house. I see it time and time again. It's not that anything is wrong. It's that we're learning, we're observing, we're looking for connection, we're looking for belonging. And if that can feel a bit fragile for us, then yeah, it's a situation, right? So of course, when my friend told me that my success was triggering her, it wasn't just that moment hurt, it really did, but it connected itself almost like a synapse connection in my brain, linked into my heart, linked into my stomach. Everything was so hurting. It was just horrible. But it connected itself to something a lot older in me. It confirmed that story for me that I'd been carrying for decades, for all my childhood and my life. That maybe I'm being too much. Maybe I need to pull back a bit, not be seen as much, not celebrate successes. Maybe success costs love and friendships. And here's what I've realized after a year of processing this. I've not brought it to you in a time where I was deep in the trauma and the grief and the hurt and the hurting heartache. I've brought it to you at a time where I'm healed, yeah, or healing deeply, processing it, having therapy through it, grieving, crying, healing, loving myself so deeply and so hard to be able to do all of that work. That, for me, I understand now, was never the truth. It was survival. And there's a huge difference, a massive difference, because survival creates rules that healing eventually asks us to question. My brain created a rule that made absolute perfect sense for me when I was in the thick of it, based on experiences, based on what I was navigating in that moment. Adele, if you shine too brightly, people will leave you. Adele, if you do too much, if you are too successful, if you do that thing, if you're seen that way, then people will not like you and they will leave. And that, for me, now feels a bit irrational. It wasn't at the time. At the time, it was about protection, survival, safety. I was wrapping myself in a protective bubble. But those protective beliefs that I had inside that bubble are almost like this whole smoke and mirror effect. They're false. If we never revisit what is happening and what we're feeling, we generate this belief and we attach that belief to a situation, even if that belief is completely wrong, false, not a thing. Mad, right? It's crazy. Psychology is the most interesting space and field of research and study and education that I would say that I have ever been in, apart from women's health and menopause. Bring those 2 together and I am geeking. Seriously. Like every single day I read a new piece of research. I enjoy that, apart from over the weekend. I give myself time. Anyway, I digress. So this year I have really deeply been asking myself, what if the problem was never my success and my bright shining light was never the issue? Not everyone can walk the path that you are walking because it was never theirs to walk anyway. Not everyone will understand the decisions that you are making because they aren't called to make them. And not everyone has the emotional capacity, it's not their problem, not their fault, to celebrate your growth. You move on. This is it. And doesn't make them bad people. I send so much love, right? So much love. You're just holding a mirror up to them in these situations. And sometimes it simply means that your growth asks questions of them that they're not ready to answer for themselves. And they can't sit in the discomfort of that. In psychology, that is what we call projection. Sometimes the qualities that we struggle to accept in ourselves feel uncomfortable when we see them in someone else. The mirror effect or projection. Your confidence can remind someone of every opportunity that they've not taken. Your boundaries can expose where someone has none, and they get so annoyed or peed off with you when you say, I'm not doing that then, or yes, of course I can support you with that, but it'll be in a week or 2 weeks' time. And they get annoyed because you expose where they have no boundaries themselves. Your success can highlight dreams that they've quietly abandoned for themselves, that they then start to think, oh my God, like I wished I could have done that for me. And that discomfort does not belong to you. It belongs to them with love, not you. That is the mirror. Okay. And I wish someone had told me this decades ago. I only learned this in the last couple of years because I spent far too long believing that other people's discomfort was evidence that I should become smaller or stay smaller. Yeah, but here's the thing. You can spend your entire life shrinking yourself to make other people feel comfortable, and it will never heal the wound that they are carrying. It's got nothing to do with you, and yet everything is projected. Yeah, and it does something to you. It creates something inside of you. I've also had to face another heartbreaking truth as we're inside this space right now talking. And I keep trying to become the version of me who wouldn't trigger any other person. But hearing from not just a friend, but also from my own mum that I trigger her is hurtful. Yeah. I've always thought to myself, do I need to be a bit kinder, quieter, more understanding, more pleasing? And if one day I'd finally become acceptable enough to receive that unconditional love, then that would be okay, right? But what healing over the decades with this has taught me is been incredibly painful. And I recognize and really feel the love for myself in the resilience that I hold in this space. You cannot earn unconditional love from someone who only knows how to love conditionally. And that for me was a huge big realization about a decade ago between my mum and I's relationship dynamic. It isn't because I'm not worthy of her love. And it certainly isn't because she doesn't want to give me that love in that way. It's because she's giving from a place of limits from her own emotional capacity. And I grieve that for her. That might be one of the deepest griefs that there is, because you're not just grieving a relationship, you're grieving the relationship you know that you so long for. You know that you really wished you had and just do not or didn't ever have with a parent. The parent you hoped would one day arrive to you, but they couldn't because they carry too much of these scars from their own experiences and learned beliefs. As we pause for a moment here, this is where the work that I do feels so aligned with as we grow and expand and we understand these and we do the work. And don't get me wrong, it is so painful to do the work. It will make you cry. It will hurt your heart. Yeah, I've faced many a low mood and depressive instances through all of this. But one of the things that I am truly connected to myself with so much love for is that I was allowing myself to do that work piece by piece by piece, so that I could be the breaker of chains, the breaker of those learned beliefs, and not carry them through the rest of my life or through my daughter's lives and the generations to come. For me, the friend that I hoped would choose healing and face the mirror instead of distance, for me, the version of the future that I have imagined where those relationships come back together, I still sit in that grief. I do, and I don't know if that will ever change. But the version of grief that I hadn't recognized until this year was that I was grieving the woman who believed that I or she had to abandon herself to keep other people other women comfortable. I started apologising again. I became the woman who celebrated safely with people I knew would hold that celebration quietly with me behind the scenes. I didn't make any of it public. I became the woman who started to second guess every success because I thought that if I shared or I was too successful, I would lose more. But that version of me got me through the last year. She protected me. She helped me survive, but not without consequences, because surviving meant some really terrible decisions. Nearly losing a huge big part of my business because of someone that I wrongfully trusted. Making an absolute terrible investment and losing an eye-watering amount of money. And saying no to opportunities because I was secretly struggling with depression. And then something happened. I was journaling one morning. I do journaling a lot. This was like maybe about a month ago now. And one of the curses of being a psychology master's graduate, I don't call myself a psychologist because I don't, one, legally I can't. I don't clinically practice. And two, because of that, right? I don't clinically practice, so I don't then refer to myself as a psychologist. But I have a master's in psychology and I practice it in practice and private care. But one of the hardest things that I've recognized through all of this, and it's taken me so long to process this, honestly, you have no idea. And I'm someone who likes to move fast. Okay, I don't have a lot of patience. I'm a Virgo, for goodness sake, right? I like fast action. That version of me from the last year, she's not coming where I'm going. I've had to cut that cord, give her the hugest big hug and say, I love you, but you need to go away. Okay? You need to pee off. We're done. You're not coming with me anymore. We're not staying small and dimming our light as we go into this next chapter. I love you. Thank you for the last year of survival, but also you created me some real badass problems. So bye-bye with love, and we move on. Love and compassion. That version of me that was healing deeply, okay, needs to be loved. She will have a connection, but she does need to go. I am gently thanking that version of me. I hope you can do the same if you are listening to this and feeling like, oh my God, it's like she's speaking about my life right now. That version kept us safe, okay, before lovingly letting her go to rest. Now, research from psychologist Kristen Neff shows that self-compassion and self-leadership and self-love, but really sitting in self-compassion, which I do for myself every day when I journal, it has to be done. It's a tool in my toolbox of resilience. This is not self-indulgent. It's one of the strongest proven predictors of resilience after rejection, after shame, after emotional pain, after grief, after heartache. It's proven of resilience. And I think that's because healing, true healing, is so uncomfortable, but it begins the moment that we stop asking, what is wrong with me? What have I done? And we start to ask, what happened to me that made me believe this about myself or this situation? Those are two very different questions at the end of the scale. One creates shame, what's wrong with me? And the other creates understanding. What happened to make me believe this? So if you've ever had someone tell you that you trigger them, if you've ever watched someone quietly disappear from your life and you still don't know why and the loop is still open, if you've ever believed that your success costs you relationships and love and connection, if you've ever felt guilty for becoming more and growing and shining and becoming yourself, then please hear me right now. You are not too much. You are not difficult to love. You are not responsible for making yourself smaller so that other people never have to confront the parts of them that hurt and see through the mirror their projection. Your job is not to dim your light. Your job is to stop apologizing now. Please, for the love of love out there, I'm gifting you an invitation today to take away. Recognize how often you apologize. Okay? Simple things. I see this in humans every day. I, for the last year, have been her, but no more. Simple things like you walk through a doorway and someone else is coming through at the same time, but you got there that little bit quicker. And instead of smiling and saying morning or afternoon or hi, you say, so sorry. I know that you're having a light bulb moment right now. So instead of that apology, instead of being someone who apologizes for taking up space, for walking through the door, for you hold a door and someone doesn't thank you and you get irate about it. I used to be her. It doesn't matter. You're not entitled to that thank you. We do these things from love and compassion. Because actually, when you stop apologizing for the space, you will shine brighter. Because the people who are meant to walk beside you won't ask you to become less. They'll celebrate every version of you. They have the courage within themselves to see that. And maybe the greatest act of healing isn't getting people back into your life as such. Maybe it's finally refusing to lose yourself in that journey. Yeah? This episode has been a very open and vulnerable share from me, and one that I've toyed with for a while, because sharing this from a place of being healed and healing for other women, from one woman to another, I share it because I too face these experiences. I'm not immune from them. My resilience has been tested, but my future is feeling so bright, and that brighter, shining version of myself, I am so excited to welcome her back. It has been a ride this last year, I will not lie. So if you too have felt this grief, the struggle, the depression, the low mood, anytime, please know that you will, and so will others at points in life. But your resilience toolkit is so important. You are powerful. You are loved. You are here, which tells me that you are also one badass woman on a purpose path. Please do me one big favor today. All I'm going to ask you is to share this episode with 2 other women and help them heal and grow. Okay, we'll come back together next week for another episode, which I know you're going to absolutely love. But for today, go share this with 2 other women and shine bright today. Beautiful soul, you are meant for more.